Welcome to William Shakespeare Off the Shelf. I'm Kenneth Brown. In this video, I'll present a brief biography of William Shakespeare for those interested in exploring some highlights of his remarkable life. I'll also examine a recurring complaint surrounding the information we have available to us. I'll examine his birth, education, and marriage. I'll also look at a controversial theory by Germaine Greer about Shakespeare's wife. I'll highlight his literary accomplishments and accumulated wealth. Finally, I'll conclude, as all things must, with a discussion of his death, burial, and the remarkable curse written on his gravestone. If you like this content, please subscribe and hit the notification button to stay informed about upcoming videos. Also, check out the link to my website in the description below. As with nearly everything involving the bard, attempts to build an agreed-upon biography create many challenges. Questions like where he lived or when he died are fairly straightforward. Others, like how he lived, or those dealing with his early life, education, or marriage, are more complicated. Even his move to London draws controversy. Like many historical figures, the more intimate details of his life are missing. As such, that life must be pieced together from public documents and other sources. Unfortunately, he had few known associations. References or indirect background material provided by the bard's contemporaries are also scarce. How these relationships are interpreted or presented, combined with one's own background, experiences, and beliefs, account for the differing opinions about who William Shakespeare was and the meaning attached to what he wrote. As for the more concrete details surrounding his life, most of what we know comes primarily from official public records. No formal biography exists until approximately 100 years after his death. The narrative biographies of famous people and celebrities we expect to see today are largely a modern occurrence. Such biographies, for those who were not of noble birth, were not generally written at the time Shakespeare lived. Personal correspondence, too, was much less common in Shakespeare's day than it later became. Paper was expensive, and letters had to be privately delivered, assuming the recipient could also read and respond. Therefore, such correspondence tended to be reserved for legal or professional matters. As a working playwright, Shakespeare was much more likely to spend his resources producing work for the stage, rather than writing letters, notes, or memoirs. Still, Shakespeare is no greater mystery than most notables from previous eras. While there are gaps in the record, other important details are clearly documented. William Shakespeare was most likely born in Stratford, England, on or about April 23, 1564. No records of his birth exist, but we do know he was baptized on April 26, 1564 at the local parish. He was the oldest surviving child of John Shakespeare, a local glover, and Mary Arden. The Ardens were a prominent landowning family in the Stratford area. Shakespeare's grandfather was a tenant farmer on the Ardens' property. It is likely through this relationship that Shakespeare's father John met Mary. Mary's father died before the marriage, naming Mary as executor of the estate. He also left her a valuable piece of land as an inheritance. For an ambitious local merchant, John's marriage into the Arden family would seem a step up socially. Due to John Shakespeare's connections as a local government official, young William probably attended the local grammar school. There he studied Latin and classical literature. Though literate, he did not attend a university. According to contemporaries, he was not one of the university wits. This was a name given to poets and playwrights in Shakespeare's day with a university education. Fellow playwright and friend Ben Jonson remarks directly on Shakespeare's limited education in his introduction to the first folio edition of the Bard's collected works published shortly after his death. In 1582, William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway, and their first daughter Susanna was born. William was 18 when they wed. Anne was 26. Because Shakespeare spent so much of his life in London away from his family, many scholars believe his marriage to Anne was not a happy one. Some suggest he may have been gay, or kept a mistress in London to whom he was truly devoted. Despite the influence of popular movies like Shakespeare in Love, no actual evidence exists for these claims. Furthermore, at least one scholar, Germaine Greer, disagrees with the traditional view of Shakespeare's marriage. In her book, Shakespeare's Wife, she challenges the narratives depicting an unhappy union. She insists that Shakespeare's marriage was in fact successful in its own way. For Greer, it was Anne Hathaway's strength and business sense that enabled her husband to become the timeless genius we know today. While not without its flaws, the book is well researched and presents a compelling alternative to the traditional narrative. Watch for my review of this fascinating book in a future video. By 1592, Shakespeare was an established actor and playwright in London. However, when or why he moved there we do not know. The record from 1585 to 1592 is dark. Scholars refer to this gap as the lost years. Numerous suggestions and theories exist about what the bard may have been up to during this mysterious period. Please let me know in the comments if this sounds like a topic you might be interested in. In London, Shakespeare developed a significant reputation and audience as an accomplished actor, playwright, and poet. His poetry includes 2 narrative poems, Venus and Adonis, and The Rape of Lucrece, along with more than 150 sonnets. His stage writing consists of 37 plays, including 14 comedies, 11 histories, and 12 tragedies. He is also credited with coining a number of new words in the English language. Countless lines and passages from his plays and poetry, like "A Rose by Any Other Name," are so firmly embedded in our culture that many people use them without realizing where they come from. Along with his success as a playwright and poet, William Shakespeare also gained significant wealth as a businessman and investor. He was a shareholder and managing member of the Lord Chamberlain's Men, London's most popular acting company. Later, he also became a stockholder in the Globe Theatre. Over time, he acquired a share in the indoor Blackfriars Theatre as well. These and other non-theatre investments made Shakespeare both prosperous and well-known at the time. In 1597, he purchased New Place, the second largest house in his hometown of Stratford. In the same vein, a year earlier, in 1596, Shakespeare's father John was granted a coat of arms. We presume the bard arranged for this as well. One of the last plays Shakespeare wrote was The Two Noble Kinsmen, with John Fletcher in 1613. At some point after this collaboration, he retired to his home in Stratford. He died there on April 23, 1616. The cause of his death is unknown. His brother-in-law, however, also passed away a week earlier. Following his death, William Shakespeare was buried in the chancel of Holy Trinity Church in his hometown of Stratford. A monument with an engraved statue of the bard was erected over his grave. Family and friends approved the engraving. For this reason, the statue is considered one of the best representations of how Shakespeare may have actually looked. On the gravestone itself is inscribed the famous curse believed to have been written by the poet himself. It reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear, to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be him that moves my bones. Please subscribe and hit the notification button if you like this content, and check out my website at bardlessons.com, linked in the description below. For more on the sources used in this video, including Shakespeare's Wife by Germaine Greer, look for those links as well in the description below. Thanks for watching.